Something I'm really passionate about talking about when it comes to family court is the credibility inversion that happens when an individual who is leaving domestic abuse enters the family court system. So this is what I like to refer to as the credibility inversion, and it's where the individual who is fleeing domestic abuse and is turning to the family court for help for various reasons is interpreted as uncredible. And the perpetrator, instead, for various reasons, appears to the family court as credible. But the problem is that the perpetrator of domestic abuse, that the individual with lived experience who is fleeing from, is not credible. And the individual who is fleeing the domestic abuse is actually the credible one. But because of very understandable natural reasons, if you understand science, because of how they present differently, they are misinterpreted. And so I'm really passionate about talking about it. And here's the thing, the strategy that individuals with lived experience have and that they're using and implementing is not working, and there is absolutely a way forward. And so stick through to the end, because I'll share a little bit more about that and what you can do about it. Okay, so number one, if you are leaving domestic abuse, the domestic abuse does not stop because you left. You may be able to set boundaries through the abuse happening through certain levers, as I call them. But the way that domestic abuse works is that it's not an incident-based model. The root cause is that the perpetrator seeks to have power and control over their target through whatever way possible. And so what happens, and so what that means is what happens is that when the abuse is cut off through a certain lever or levers, it does not stop. It just switches levers and it intensifies until a system recognizes what's happening and thus steps in and negatively reinforces it, rather than just passively doing nothing, or positively reinforcing, as I see in my work a lot. And then it has a chance, a really good chance of, stopping. But the problem is that individuals with lived experience don't look credible. And we'll get to that in a second here. And so that never happens. And so what happens is that the domestic abuse just switches levers and intensifies. And so you have the perpetrator entering court, and they are not being subjected to coercive control. They are subjecting somebody else to coercive control. So number one, they're not being subjected to coercive control, so they're not hypervigilant. Number two, they are subjecting somebody else to coercive control, and that's how a lot of them have learned to regulate their nervous system, so they're super regulated, so they're not hypervigilant. Whereas the individual who is desperately trying to flee the domestic abuse is being coercively controlled, and so they are hypervigilant. So that's the first reason. The second reason a lot is that we'll see financial abuse. And so the perpetrator does not have his needs, basic needs for him and his children stripped of him. In fact, he has an elevation in lifestyle if he's financially abusing her, because now he's taking all the money that is enabled by her caretaking, especially if she's a stay-at-home mom. And now he has an elevation in lifestyle because he's taking more than his half and portion of the pie. You know what I mean? And so, again, he's not hypervigilant, and he has an elevation in lifestyle, and he can buy the brand new car, buy all these, nice, expensive new things or whatever, which can be regulating for somebody. And so he doesn't appear hypervigilant, whereas she can't even afford basic necessities for herself and her children. And so she's hypervigilant. So that's the second reason. Number three, he has more than enough money to go get legal counsel to become aware of his substantive rights and how to procedurally get there, because procedure is the vehicle by which you get from where you are to where you want to be, to your substantive rights. Procedure is the vehicle. And so he has counsel to explain that to him. He has counsel explaining the procedural steps. He has counsel translating lived experience language to procedural language. And so he's regulated, whereas she has to navigate a system being coercive and controlled, not being able to afford basic necessities for her and her children, despite being used to caretake to continue to enable the income. So she's being exploited, right? And so, and she has to navigate an adversarial system alone. And she has no one translating, and she has nobody educating her on her rights. And so she's hypervigilant. And so it's like, if you know basic psychology, it's like, I always say, it's like shoving dust up somebody's nose and wondering why they're sneezing. Well, if you subject somebody to coercive control, if you strip them of the ability to even afford the basic necessities for them and their children, yet you continue to exploit them and use their caretaking to enable the income, and if you don't have representation but the other person does, even though again you're enabling this, all that he has, but you're the only one being stripped, despite marriage being an economic partnership where both parties are entitled to equitable access pending proceedings per NJSA 2A34-23 and Malamo vs. Malamo. That makes somebody hypervigilant. It's basic 101 psychology. Well, I don't know if they teach it in 101, but you understand what I'm saying? And instead of the court automatically recognizing this, instead they see her as uncredible. That's how they interpret all this, and they interpret him as credible. And it's completely unfair, it's completely awful, and it's why that I do the work I do. But here's the thing. You are absolutely not stuck. You are absolutely not stuck. We have to walk in there very structured. We have to have our economic transition plan. Courts do really well with structured plans. Most women are just taught to go into court and ask for support, okay? But if you go in there with an actual plan and you know how to document what's going on, and a lot of people think they know how to document and they don't. That's why the paralegal school exists, right? It's an actual skill set, right? And if you know how to strategically communicate with the other party who's abusive, and it's a skill set, right? There's no guarantees ever in life, ever in family law, right? The family court, but you increase your chances exponentially. People don't even realize how presenting with an economic transition plan, with your case properly documented and with communicating effectively, can make such a difference and make you appear credible. And that is exactly the work that I do. So, if you would like support with this, I want to invite you to go ahead, visit the link in my bio.